Are you looking for a quick and easy way to reduce your stress and anxiety? I know I was, and that's why I founded Working on Calm. I was desperate for something that would make me feel better, make me happier and more present in my life, and decrease that horrible anxious feeling that I had a lot. And I spent quite a bit of time researching it, writing about it on the blog, and I found a number of techniques that are helpful when it comes to building resiliency, which is really what we need when we want to manage stress and decrease anxiety. But the number one thing I found to help me was connecting with my breath. And it doesn't require a formal meditation practice. Those are great. It does nothing overwhelming. It's just simply learning to pay attention to your breath for a few minutes a day. And it sort of has made me into this breathing practice nerd. I'm always on the lookout for information and research on breathing techniques, and that's why I loved James Nestor's book, Breath. And those who have been following along on the blog know that's the case because this is the sixth and final in the series I'm doing on my favorite lessons from his book. And so the idea here is to give you some fundamentals about breathing so that you too can have a tool in your toolbox to help you manage your stress and anxiety. The thing I love about breathing is that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you can stop and practice your breathing. People don't even have to know that you're feeling anxious or you're managing your stress in that moment. It's that simple and easy to implement. So let's talk about the core messages from the book that anyone who is interested in controlling stress and anxiety through breathing should know. And the first lesson is that mouth breathing is bad. And we know that from research, it does things like increase blood pressure and decrease heart rate variability. It can be related with sleep apnea and lead to like bacterial growth in the nose. So in general, mouth breathing is bad. If you're looking for just basic breathing techniques, simply focus on the opposite, which is nasal breathing. And that's the second lesson that I want to take away from the book Breath. That is to really focus on the power of nasal breathing. It's sort of the opposite of all those bad things of mouth breathing. So decreases your blood pressure, increases heart rate variability, makes it so that you are breathing more efficiently and able to perform physical activities, particularly relevant if you're an athlete, and decreases things like sleep apnea, which we know can lead to all kinds of problems, including earlier death rates. So a couple of techniques if you're trying to focus on nasal breathing. I have two posts previously from the book Breath. One's just on the simple technique of practicing breathing through your nose. And then another one is alternate nostril breathing, which is a great way to walk away feeling invigorated. I highly recommend that technique if you are practicing your breathing and you want to feel good, decrease stress before something like a meeting or going somewhere like a performance. Really good for that. I wouldn't necessarily try that like right before bed. All right, so we've got mouth breathing's bad, nasal breathing's good. And another lesson that's great in the book is about exhaling and learning to exhale for a longer amount of time. And this is something that research has been showing about a 2-to-1 ratio is really good for calming anxiety and stress. So what that means is that if you just simply count as you inhale and then count as you exhale, aim for an exhalation that is twice the length of your inhalation. So we know that exhaling longer is really good for sending that signal to sort of activating that parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, which counters that fight or flight mode. A couple of ways to help with building your exhalation and just really your breathing sort of like that diaphragmatic, so getting into the belly breath is really important here. So there's 2 other posts I did from the book Breath. One was about the 3-part breathing, and this is a technique that helps you to learn to breathe sort of into the different areas. So there's the upper chest, the mid sort of heart range, and then down into the belly. And by practicing this 3-part or yogic breathing, it's really helpful in teaching you to breathe deeper and to exhale slowly. I'm still working on that, practicing that technique myself. And the other one that I had posted was about humming. And this is an effective way to sort of get all of the oxygen or all of the air out of the lungs. So both of those posts will help you with exhaling longer and more completely. The 4th lesson that they talk about in the book that is interesting is the idea that we need to chew more. And if you sort of go back in history, there weren't nearly as many breathing problems. And the theory is that it's related to the size of our mouth and the structure of our faces, and that this is changing over time, probably due to all of the soft processed foods we're eating nowadays. And so if there are things you can do to incorporate more whole foods, things that require more chewing, like more carrots versus like mashed potatoes or chips or crackers, that can help to strengthen the bones and structures, which actually continue to mold and change shapes well into older age. And so by simply making sure you're using those muscles, you can influence the structures and help to encourage more proper breathing, more open airways. And then the last idea, the 5th lesson to take away from the book Breath, is that the way we breathe matters. And so it's important to find breathing practices that work for you. And so that's why I posted a couple of different ones on the blog. I'm always posting about different breathing techniques. When I meet with my wellness coaching clients, we always begin with a different breathing practice so that they can learn to do the same thing to calm themselves down, to transition into whatever it is that we're, especially if we're going into a meeting. When I do my workshops, I always start with a mindful breathing practice. So just really start to pay attention to the way that you breathe. And in the book, they talk about sort of the perfect breath. And I also posted on this, teaching you how to use more what's called coherent breathing. And it's simply a 5 to 6 second inhale and a 5 to 6 second exhale. That's all you need to do, is simply practice that, get into that belly breathing, and you'll be surprised at how effective it is for dealing with stress and anxiety. Like I said, this is the number one way I have found personally to instantly keep my anxiety in check. As soon as I notice I'm starting to feel anxious or those anxious thoughts are creeping up for me, I do a check and I think, how am I breathing? How am I feeling? And it's usually this shallow breathing up into my chest. I can simply stop, practice one of the many different techniques that I've talked about and posted about, and it will calm me down. I hope that you'll give it a try too. I know I've had a number of clients who have tried it and been successful. There are so many different techniques out there that it's not so much that you have to get wrapped up in finding the right one. It's what's the right one for you. So I have one client who started practicing and he does it in the shower. It's helpful time for him. He calms down. It's time where he knows he won't be disturbed by other people. And he found that by doing that, he was less reactive to stressful events at work. He recounted sort of going into a meeting and being, sort of pissed off at what was happening in the meeting. And he went back to his office, practiced breathing for a few minutes, and was able to transition and not be as reactive as he might have been in the past. Similarly, I had another client who worked on a breathing practice and developing one that she could use that would work for her. And it took her a while to find the one that worked for her. So I encourage you to not be discouraged if that happens to you too. And what she found is that as she practiced and, more consistently, she became a much more mindful parent, meaning she was present in the moment. She was able to enjoy these like little moments that popped up that in the past she would have been distracted by anxious thoughts. And she was less reactive. So when her son would be emotional, she would find herself being able to be there for him and be supportive, but not get completely stressed out and burned out by it. And those are just two examples of how breathing can affect us differently, but ultimately help us to build resilience, to deal with stress, and to decrease anxiety. For more tips like this, check out the other posts that I made from the Breath series. And consider signing up for Take 5. It's my newsletter where I deliver these messages straight to your inbox. Those who subscribe to my newsletter will get my free guide, which contains 5 very simple techniques that you can use to decrease stress and boost resilience. And each of the techniques takes 5 minutes or less. So really great things to have in your back pocket or to sort of build your toolbox, as I like to refer to it. Healthy habits don't have to feel overwhelming. My goal for you in seeing this video is that you'll walk away thinking about your breathing and just being more aware of it. If you can simply practice for 2 minutes a day, maybe consider doing what's called habit stacking. So adding it to something you already do consistently. Like if you stand at the coffee pot and brew yourself a cup of coffee, try it then. Breathe for just 1 or 2 minutes while that's brewing. Or try it when you're stopped at a stoplight. Or try it when you're stretching after your workout. These things that you're already doing throughout the day so it doesn't feel like one more thing to do. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can feel calm, be well, build your resilience in just a few minutes a day. I hope this helps. Let me know.